Hello, my most beloved and murderous horde, and welcome back. I'm, of course, your mistress of murder, and you all know Charlie. Say hello, Charlie. In our conversations, we have covered a wide range of topics that chill you mortals to the very core. We have discussed everything from human predators, acts of unspeakable destruction, and even devastating blunders of psychology. But, unfortunately for you all, the mortal coil doesn't end there. You see, not all horrific fates are brought upon you or the world by your fellow humans. There is plenty more to fear in this world. Here are the top 10 most terrifying things in existence. Shall we begin? You know the drill by now, my lovelies. Pick your poison. Sit back, relax, and let us have ourselves a little conversation. Number 10. Epidermolysis bullosa. Epidermolysis bullosa, aka butterfly children's disease, cotton wool babies, or crystal skin children, are just a few names that are used to describe a group of genetic conditions that cause the skin to be very fragile and to blister easily. These genetic conditions namely affect the keratin genes KRT5 and KRT14. Blisters and skin erosions form in response to minor injury or friction, such as rubbing or scratching. The signs and symptoms of this condition vary widely among the affected individuals. Now, in mild cases, blistering may primarily affect the hands, feet, knees, and elbows. However, in severe cases, this condition may involve widespread blistering that can lead to vision loss, disfigurement, and other serious medical problems. Those with mild cases may not develop symptoms until they start to crawl or walk. However, complications may include the narrowing of the esophagus, causing a difficulty with swallowing, certain types of skin cell cancer, and the need for the amputation of limbs. Luckily, this condition is pretty rare, with an estimated 20 per million live births being diagnosed, and a 9 per million people in the general population that have this condition. Unfortunately, there are 3 types of this condition, and in all of them, the life expectancy is tragic to say the least. In 2 of the types, they tend to be rather fatal, and death normally occurs during infancy, while the 3rd and final one, the sufferers of this disorder die normally in their early adulthood years. Now, while there are treatments available for this genetic condition, there is, thus far, no cure. Number 9. Naegleria fowleri. Naegleria fowleri, commonly referred to as the brain-eating amoeba, is a free-living, microscopic, single-celled living organism that can cause a rare but devastating infection of the brain, which causes swelling and inflammation of the organ and the surrounding tissues. Now, the amoeba itself is commonly found in warm, fresh water, lakes, rivers, and hot springs, and even the surrounding soil of the infected bodies of water. Now, this amoeba usually infects people when contaminated water enters the body through the nose. Once the amoeba enters the nose, it then travels to the brain, where it causes something called PAM, which is usually fatal. Infection typically occurs when people go swimming or diving in warm, fresh water places, lakes, rivers, etc., but in very rare cases, this infection may also occur when contaminated water from other sources, such as an inadequately chlorinated swimming pool or heated and contaminated tap water that includes improperly cleaned neti pots, enters the nose. You cannot get infected from swallowing the contaminated water, though. Now, even though these amoebas are relatively common, it only very rarely causes this brain disease. It occurs from 0 to 8 times a year, almost always from July to September. Now, the symptoms of PAM are not specific to this disease, and at first it may seem like a viral meningitis. Symptoms including headache, fever, stiff neck, loss of appetite, vomiting, altered mental state, seizures, and even possibly a coma. Other symptoms may include hallucinations, drooping eyelids, blurred vision, and a loss of the sense of taste. The right treatment isn't clear. A number of drugs kill the amoebas in the test tube, but even when treated with these drugs, very few patients survive. This amoeba has an over 97% fatality rate. Only 4 people out of the 145 known infected individuals in the United States from 1962 to 2018 have survived it. There is also no rapid test for infection with this brain-eating amoeba, but researchers are working to develop one. However, until such tests come along, it can take weeks to identify the amoeba, which unfortunately normally happens post-mortem, as death usually occurs from 3 to 7 days after symptoms appear. The average time of death is 3 to 5 days from the symptom onset. Number 8. Kuru. Kuru, otherwise known as the laughing sickness, is by far no laughing matter. Kuru is a very rare prion disease and is one that I have mentioned before in my cannibalism facts video. Now, Kuru is not only very rare, but it is also incurable and always fatal. It is a neurodegenerative prion disease that was formerly common among the 4 people of Papua New Guinea, which at its peak in the 1950s killed up to 2% of the tribe each year, though reports of this disease have lasted from 1957 to as recently as 2004. Now, the reason this disease was so prevalent among the 4 people is due to the fact that they practiced a form of necrocannibalism until the 1950s. This disease is mainly spread when a human being eats another human being's brain tissue. This very specific form of cannibalism was a tradition that the 4 tribe formerly practiced, as they ate the brains of their dead as a part of the funeral ritual. Now, symptoms of Kuru include body tremors, random outbursts of laughter, giving it its nickname, and a gradual loss of coordination. Complications can also include infection and pneumonia during the terminal stage. There is no treatment, there is no cure, and as I stated, this prion is 100% fatal, with death occurring 11 to 14 months after symptoms first appear. This is made all the more terrifying as the inactive period of this prion can be anywhere between 5 to 50 years after exposure, though it normally averages about somewhere between 10 to 13 years. Number 7. Locked-in syndrome. Locked-in syndrome is a rare neurological disorder in which there is complete paralysis of all voluntary muscles except for the ones that control the eyes. Individuals with locked-in syndrome are conscious and awake, but have no ability to produce movement outside of eye movement or to speak. Cognitive function is usually unaffected, and communication is possible through eye movements or blinking. Locked-in syndrome is caused by damage to the pons, a part of the brainstem that contains nerve fibers that relay information to other areas of the brain. As one could imagine, becoming suddenly paralyzed for no apparent reason can be quite terrifying. Individuals with locked-in syndrome classically cannot consciously or voluntarily chew, swallow, breathe, speak, or produce any movements other than those involving the eyes or eyelids. Some affected individuals can move their eyes up and down vertically, but not side to side, horizontally. Now, affected individuals are bedridden and are completely reliant on caregivers. Locked-in syndrome affects males and females in equal numbers, and while it can affect individuals of all ages, including children, it is most often seen in adults who are more at risk for stroke and bleeding. Because cases of locked-in syndrome may go unrecognized or misdiagnosed, it is difficult to determine the actual number of individuals who have had the disorder in the general population. Now, normally a disease or syndrome with a high or long-term survival rate would be comforting, but given the nature and symptoms of this disorder, the 80% chance of a 10-year survival seems to be more of an unimaginable living hell rather than one of hope. Number 6. Fatal Familial Insomnia, or FFI. FFI is an inherited prion disease that mainly affects the thalamus. The thalamus is the part of the brain that controls the sleep-awake cycle, but it is also known as the relay center of the brain because it helps the different parts of the brain communicate with each other. Now, like all prion diseases, FFI is a progressive neurodegenerative disease, which means that over time there are fewer nerve cells. Loss of neurons in this particular part of the brain, as well as other mechanisms, is not yet fully understood or why it causes the symptoms of FFI. Now, the first symptoms of FFI usually begin in midlife and may include progressive insomnia, weight loss, lack of appetite, too high or too low body temperature, hallucinations, and rapidly progressive dementia. Almost all cases of FFI are caused by certain changes or mutations in the PRNP gene and are inherited, though there are a very small number of reported sporadic cases of FFI. Unfortunately, there is currently no effective treatment for this disease, but research for treatment and a cure is currently ongoing. More unfortunately is that death usually occurs within 12 to 18 months of the first symptoms. In an overly simplified way of explaining what this disease does, and if you'll excuse the morbid humor, I'll just say that for those with this diagnosis, the phrase, "I'll sleep when I am dead," is something to be taken quite literally. Number 5. Alien Hand Syndrome. Alien Hand Syndrome, or Dr. Strangelove Syndrome, is truly the oddest one on this list. Alien Hand Syndrome is a category of conditions in which a person experiences their limbs acting seemingly on their own without conscious control over the actions. The good news is that it is rare. Bad news is that, well, really anyone can get it, and sometimes it's not the hand that is affected, as sometimes it's the leg, though this isn't as common. The affected hand feels foreign to its owner, and during these episodes, it seems to move deliberately to carry out tasks that are unintentional. While it can affect children, it usually occurs in adults. Now, the most prominent symptom of alien hand syndrome is the inability to control the hand or limb as it acts independently. The affected hand may move involuntarily and perform goal-directed tasks and actions. The hand is said to move without cognitive control or awareness. It's as though it's being controlled by someone else, or, as I said, has a mind of its own. The hand may touch your face, button a shirt, or pick up an object, sometimes repeatedly or compulsively. The alien hand may also levitate on its own. The hand may also engage in self-oppositional actions, such as closing a drawer that the other hand just opened, or unbuttoning a shirt that the other hand just buttoned. The alien hand is uncooperative and may perform incorrect actions or fail to follow commands. People with alien hand syndrome may sense that the hand or limb is foreign or simply doesn't belong to them. However, they don't deny owning the limb, which can happen in other disorders. While there is no cure for alien hand syndrome, there are some treatments, and those affected by it may be able to manage their symptoms to some degree. Checking in regularly with your doctor if you experience any symptoms related to this disease is the first good step, as a proper diagnosis may help to reduce any unease that one may be experiencing. Your doctor will help you manage your symptoms and set up an appropriate treatment plan based on the affected's individual needs. Number 4. Sudden Adult Death Syndrome. Sudden Adult Death Syndrome, or SADS, is exactly what you would expect it to be, which is the sudden, unexpected death of an adolescent or an adult, mainly occurring during sleep. In this aspect, it is very much like SIDS, or Sudden Infant Death Syndrome. Now, luckily, sudden unexpected death syndrome is rare in most areas of the world. This syndrome occurs in populations that are culturally and genetically distinct, and people who leave the population carry with them the vulnerability to die suddenly during their sleep. Now, sudden unexplained death syndrome was first noted in 1977 among Southeast Asian refugees in the United States. The disease was again noted in Singapore when a retrospective survey of records showed that 230 otherwise healthy Thai foreign workers residing in Singapore died suddenly of unexplained causes between the years of 1982 and 1990. Unfortunately, diagnosis of these events are only found out post-mortem. Number 3. Invisible fire. Invisible fire is a little misleading, but it is technically true. You see, invisible fire is also known as an ethanol fire, and ethanol fires are incredibly dangerous. This is because ethanol burns with a very pale blue flame and is smokeless. Now, this kind of fire is damn near invisible to the naked eye, and if you cannot see it, then you could very easily find yourself enveloped in flames before you even realize it. Now, this type of fire is started in one of a few ways, either with ethanol, which is the type of thing you would find in alcoholic beverages, methanol, or wood alcohol, butane, which is a natural gas, or even sometimes propane without the added sulfur, as well as a few other natural gases could also start this kind of fire. Now, the best way to extinguish these fires is actually to stop the gas source instead of fighting the flame itself. Cooling the source of the fire is also a safe way to stop this blaze, as well as smothering and using the appropriate fire extinguisher. Number 2. The Bolton Strid. The Bolton Strid is a picturesque stretch of river that looks more like a stream and the type of place that one might find fairies and other mythical creatures frolicking around in Yorkshire, England. But just beneath the surface of this natural beauty is a natural booby trap that has claimed a number of lives. Now, around the area of the Strid, the river wharf runs between two banks of mossy boulders, and it looks more like a stream or a creek rather than the rushing river that it is. But if you travel just upstream of this spot, you will see that the waterway actually expands into a proper river, some 30 feet across with frothing currents and waves. Now, the reason that the Strid is so thin in this one area is actually not because it's run off course of the river, but because the waters have changed their orientation. Instead of it flowing in a wide horizontal course, which is what is typical of a river, the waters actually begin to flow vertically in the tight shaft created by the natural rock. Now, this change in orientation has actually created a deceptively deep and powerful current beneath, even carving out some of the area beneath the shore rocks and the land around the shores. This creates a void where debris and people in the water can very easily be sucked into and be trapped. Now, indeed, there is really no hard number on about exactly how many people have perished in the Strid, But the local legend is that no one who has dared enter those waters has ever made it out alive. The caves and naturally carved booby traps lying just under the surface of the river have been claiming lives for centuries. Nonetheless, the hiking trail that takes people near the Strid is still a very popular place to stroll and to have picnics. Today, luckily, there are signs up all around warning of this river's hidden dangers. But, even with these in place, it seems unlikely that the bloodlust of the Bolton Strid will ever be sated. And finally, number 1. The Gimpy tree. The Gimpy tree, also known as the stinging bush, mulberry leaf stinger, Gimpy, moonlighter, and a few other names, is a plant that is very common to the rainforest areas in the northeast of Australia. However, because, of course, it is Australia, and as we all know, everything in Australia wants you to die, there is another name for the Gimpy tree, the suicide plant, as it is best known for the stinging hairs that cover the entire plant and its fruit that deliver a potent neurotoxin when touched. In fact, it is the most toxic of all of the Australian species of stinging trees. There are even reports, some of which I myself have covered in a previous video, of people and animals even committing suicide soon after touching this plant. The pain has been likened to that of being burnt with hot acid and electrocuted at the same time. Interestingly enough, the fruit that the plant produces is edible to humans, if the stinging hairs that cover it are removed, and if, of course, you're willing to run that risk. The Gimpy tree grows as a single-stemmed plant, reaching 1 to 3 meters or 3 to 10 feet in height. It has large heart-shaped leaves about 12 to 22 centimeters, 5 to 9 inches, long, and 11 to 18 centimeters, 4 to 7 inches wide, with very finely toothed edges on them. Now, the hair, like stingers on the plant, is actually what you need to be watchful of, as even through clothing, face masks, and even welder's gloves, and sometimes even military-grade equipment, you can still be stung by this plant. What is worse is that the symptoms from just one encounter with these plants, which can range from watery eyes, runny noses, just to start, actually goes further, as the sting from the plant can actually require hospitalization. With the symptoms aside from the extreme pain, there is intense itching, huge hives, and you could even actually be allergic to this plant and go into anaphylactic shock from it. And, as it turns out, more than a few people are allergic to the plant, quite severely in fact. This plant has also been suspected to have been used in biological warfare due to the intensity of its neurotoxin. However, no documented evidence has been found to prove this. And that is all the time I have for you tonight, my lovelies. And remember, haunting dreams and blessed be.